This standard is almost at the core of many strategic thoughts on C-level about the future of company, about the future of business models, about the future of entrepreneurship. The questions they have are mirrored in that standard. The big thing with this standard is to enable a totally new approach of people management. Management is very much, in many ways, a subject that's stuck in the 80s or 90s in many companies, and has to reinvent itself. So standards is about connectivity. It's about bringing things together and making things more easier to handle.
It's like a referee in a sportings match where, if they're doing a good job, you don't notice them, right? But they're there. And it means, that the foundation is being followed, that you're allowed to focus on the dynamics and the creativity and the innovation of the game. What defines sort of thought leadership in terms of either workplace standards or this particular standard?
I think the standard itself is a great piece of thought leadership because it leads into the future. Thought leadership has to be proved by going into the details, checking whether the ideas are related to practice, whether they can work, how they apply to a specific situation in a company or an organization. You have to create consensus about what's the best path to the future. And therefore, you need a group of people that is highly involved. And that's exactly what happened with that standard. These people have been highly involved. It's not been about who has the best single idea of how to create some fancy performance indicator or what. It's about the general concept that's brought together by a group of experts that are all thinking towards the future. And that's the big value. It's not a single opinion, it's a shared knowledge of a group of experts. At the very end, it's about being more productive and being more successful. That's a reliable system of improvement, I would say, which is proven outside, which is proven by the backing of a community of experts, and which is just for the beginning, it's worth starting thinking of it. Nothing more. You do not need to have to do more. They try to improve their organization. And they're starting by testing tools. And once it worked, they try to scale it up and they do a global rollout. And that's nothing different than creating a standard. So companies are doing it always. If you want to use economies of scale, you're doing it all the time. So the question is, what's better? Inventing your own standard for some tool you developed on your own, or using a reliable system that's created by expert and that's also comparable, and you can have checks on it by an objective auditory.
I wish that these were commonplace many years ago, because that would have helped me in my career. Because I'm as a thoughtful, competitive person who believes they're adding value to their organization, the ability to demonstrate that more objectively, internally and externally is something that these standards are enabling. But in your own words, what do you see as some of the material changes that will emerge from this new era of people management?
I think we have a paradigm shift in economy in general. People talking about purpose, CEOs talking about diversity. We are talking about how to handle climate change, how to reconnect to society. So there need to be rules and principles, but they also need to be connected to the outside world. And I think that's the general aspect that lies behind doing business in the future, connecting to the outside world, connecting to ecosystems, and the connection is always the person. It's the human, and that's why HR management should be at the core of how we define business of the future. But the point is, handling people, interacting with people, developing people will always be a human-to-human interaction. And we can focus on the core aspects, and that's the quality of human relations.
That anything that can be automated was never HR in the first place. And
yeah,
some people
quickly
agree with that, and others will push back.
So my advice would be just make use of it. Just join a community, just get more information, get more contacts, get more expert advice, probably share your experience, share your stories. It's not about helping that project becoming a success story. This is on the way, the train is running. So the question is whether you're on the train or you're standing at the station and looking after it. And I think the HR community in many countries still has to wake up.
Yeah.
Interestingly, this standard and the concept behind it has been more frequently discussed among investment people. That's interesting. That should be a wake-up call for human resources practitioners.
What was it about the ISO direction that maybe differentiates itself from other standards or frameworks?
There's only one ISO, and the I is the international. For me, the ISO is a reliable official network. Of course, there might be different standards, different models, different concepts, but if you want to create growth, it's pretty useful to work together on the same basis, on the same standard, so you can compare and you can derive knowledge out of the handling of this standard. And that's a growth machinery in itself for me. You've been talking about sustainability.
Yes.
There will be ISO will be there in the next 20 years, the next 50 years, the next 100 years. The standard will be reviewed from time to time. So this is not a one-off. It's about a process that will go on and that will improve the standard and adapt it to changes we experience. And I'm not sure which other organization might be willing or able to do that work.
Where would you put standards, ISO standards? Is it something that organizations need to get on top of, or is there an advantage or a strategy to lagging a bit? What are your thoughts on that?
I would like to turn the perspective around.
Fair enough.
What if you miss this standard? Isn't it worth just looking into it and see what's in for you? For me, it's not about being first mover or about lagging behind. This is on a timeline. It's not about the goal. For me, it's about the goal. The goal is to improve your organization, and standards can do that. And there is a standard. So if I was interested in improving my organization, I would just look into it. Pretty easy.
And if people are on top of this, if they are thought leaders, they're doing good for themselves and their organizations, they really see that what you and I are talking about today is really just the tip of an iceberg. Is that fair?
It is. It is. Yeah. It is. And the interesting thing is that more and more people get aware of it. So you mentioned the ESG movement or concept. 2 years ago, almost nobody was talking about it. Now everybody gets aware that this is a path to future.
Is where there's sort of momentum on both sides of the Atlantic. You know, that really there's a different raise the tide in the US and raise the tide in Europe, and they're converging in a complementary way that usually doesn't happen.
I am biased for the future, and this is a tool for creating future. So I like to be biased that way.
Well, Andreas, thank you for sharing your thought leadership with us today.